Okay, so here's your review for 1-1 to 1-4. Use the figure to determine the intersection of ABC and EFG. No gum popping. Okay, so ABCD would be the fourth letter, and EFGH would be the fourth letter. And it's basically the top and the bottom. Top and the bottom. And you want to know the intersection, and so there is none in this case. For sure, two planes cannot intersect at a point. Remember that when you have a problem like this, your letters will change. You know, if it had numbers, the numbers change too. So they basically could pick two different planes. So they might have chosen the left with the top, and it would have been AB. So if it were the left with the top, then it'd be AB. I have no way of knowing which one they're going to do. You know, it's all random, completely random. So just know how to do this concept. Any questions? Okay, also the way I did my reviews is this is sorted in order where it's from section 1-1 and it's number 7. And like this is from section 1-1, it's number 9. So I do have it sequential by section. You know, the oldest stuff is first in the review and so forth. Okay, so then this says name two planes that intersect in QR. So the first thing I do is I darken QR and then identify like which one it is. So this will be the front and the back. The front and the bottom. Front and the bottom. So the front would be QRVU. And the bottom would be QRST. And you can see that two letters match, and they're the QR that we wanted. That's how you know we did it right, that you have two letters match. And then just choose one, so QTS and RVU. Okay, that's D. Any questions on that one? Okay. Here's your next one. It says 3 non-collinear points line a plane. Use the figure to the right. Find a plane that contains the first 3 points, then determine whether the fourth is in that plane, and then write coplanar, or actually just select it. So we have ZSY, which would be the vertical plane, and then C is on the vertical plane, so that'd be coplanar, like that. So that's on the vertical plane. On the vertical plane. Okay, so now we're done with number 3. Some of these are going to look familiar to a classwork we had. Also, just as a reminder, make sure you get your classwork done, like the redo of it, before the test. Like the test is, in this case, Monday, so you probably ought to do your retake today or tomorrow, if you're still going to plan on doing that to improve your grade. Okay, so this one says TQ and QT are the same line, and this is one that's always true, because remember, you can switch letters on lines and segments, but not rays. And so if they change this to rays instead of lines, then it'd be never. Okay, but in this case, they kept it the same. Any questions? Okay, number 5, determine whether the planes are collinear, or the lines are collinear. 2 distinct intersecting lines are coplanar. It is always, never, or sometimes true. So on this one, if you have 2 lines that intersect at a point, those 2 lines always have to be on the same plane. So if it intersects, then it'd be always. If it doesn't intersect, then it could be sometimes. Because they could be parallel or skew. So remember that skew would be not on the same plane. Like if you're talking about this one with this one, that's an example of skew. They don't intersect. So the dark ones are an example of skew. Any questions? Okay, then another one you probably recognize, JK and JL are the same ray.
Is that sometimes?
Yes, it is. Very good. So, yeah, most of these do show up on your Math Excel homework too. So the true cases are when it's like that, or when it's like this, because in both cases, JK as a ray is equal to JL as a ray, because you start at J, go through something, and continue, and they're in the same, they're like that. Excuse me. The false cases are like if you have J in the middle, and then say you're having K go to the right, and have L go to the left. That's an example of a false case because they're not the same ray in this case. Also, like one could be going up and one could be going sideways. So it doesn't have to be that they're opposite rays like this one. It's just they're different rays. So those are the false cases. So because there is a false case, then it's sometimes. Any questions? Okay. Number 7, 4 points are coplanar. So remember, there is a true case for this when all 4 would be on the same plane. But there's also a false case where like a line cuts through and it intersects at that point. So you could say a couple of points are on the plane and one of them's off the plane. So again, that's going to be sometimes. So on these type problems, just remember your postulates and theorems from your worksheets and determine the logic, whether it's true or false, or always or sometimes or never. Okay, so that's number 7. Number 8, this one we have 2 3s, 2 7s, 2 negative 4s. So yeah, this, and this one. This does appear to be the same, so you could put it here. In fact, if you really wanted to, for this one, the equation would be y equal x, because they're the same numbers, and it goes through 0, 0 also. So 0 would have been your y-intercept. Now this is an example of a good one that I'm probably not going to put on the test because it takes up so much space and you've already seen this a couple of times. You know, there's more questions on the review than what's going to be on the test. Okay. The next one says find the length of the segment AB. So there are a few ways to do this. One way is to count, and remember when you're counting you got to start at 0 for this point, and so you say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units. So then your length would be 7. So that's one way to do it. Remember there's 3 ways. I don't care which way you do it. Another way to do it is to measure the distance from 0. So from -1 to 0 it's 1, and from 0 to 6 it's 6. So then you do 1 plus 6 and you get 7. So again, you get the exact same answer. Just make sure you know how to handle if both are positive, both are negative, or if you have one of each, just like this. Okay. And then the final way, which you could do it, was if you do 6 minus -1 and absolute value of that. So that's like the absolute value is 6 plus 1, which would just be 7. The absolute value of 7 is positive 7. So remember your lengths have to be positive. So any of those 3 methods. All right, so your next one, the top would always be the same because they're talking about Quincy to Jacksonville is assumed to be straight. So that part's the same. This one could be different. So pay attention, you know, when you come into the test, you might have different cities here. Okay, so what we're interested in is Madison, and that's right here, and McLenny, which is right here. So it wants to know how long, but the first step would be get your distance. So you want to do 335 minus 251. So that's 84 miles. So that's your distance. Now the next part is, okay, let's just use some common sense. If you were going 84 miles an hour and it was 84 miles, it'd be 1 hour. Okay. You're going 55 though, so 84 divided by 55 . Mm-hmm. 84 divided by 55. Now remember on these calculators, if you just press enter, it's going to keep it as a fraction. So again, make sure you know to press Control Enter, because Control Enter gives you the approximate, and there you go. So we have 1.527. And then make sure before you put your final answer, you read the directions. It says round to 2 decimal places.
So 1.53.
Perfect. 1.53. 1.53. And that's definitely what we want for the answer. Now, in one class, they were kind of interested in how many minutes is that. And so let me go through that, even though it's optional. Remember that you'd have to do like unit conversions to get minutes. So you take the 0.53 hours, and then you got to do your conversion. There are 60 minutes in 1 hour. So basically your units have to cancel. and now you're left with minutes. So if it looks like this, that means you're going to multiply 0.53 times 60, and that gives you 31.8 minutes. And you could take the 0.8, do something, and get your seconds, but I'm not going to bother. So, in other words, this is approximately 1 hour and 32 minutes. So, approximately 1 hour, 32 minutes. Okay. So, things like this could help you in chemistry or physics when you're doing conversions. Any questions? And again, Control Enter makes it a decimal. Control Enter makes it a decimal. Okay, so there's number 10. Number 11. Okay, so this one says A is at -4 and B is at 6. So I'm going to draw a picture for it to make sense. A is at -4. B is at +6. It's talking about C as 1/5 of the way there. My first step would be estimate where 0 is. So it's going to be about right there because it's closer to the 4. Your first step on this is get your distance. So how do y'all get that? Or what do you get?
10.
Yeah, 10. So you can say from here to here is 4, from here to here is 6, 4 plus 6 is 10. Or you can do 6 minus -4. Or you can count. Okay, so excellent. So you get your distance first. Then notice you have a little fraction here. It's 1/5 from A to B. So that means it's going to be closer to the A because 1/5 is a small fraction. Okay, so what we do is multiply by the fraction, and so we do 10 times 1/5.
In this case, you just know 10.
2, right. Yeah, so you could do 10 parentheses, 1 divided by 5, and it changes it, or you could say 10 divided by 5, whatever you want to do. You get 2. Now 2 doesn't look like a reasonable answer because we're not done. Because 1/5 means it's going to be pretty close to here. So we start at A and then go right 2. So -4 plus 2 is -2. And that's your answer. So in other words, if you split this up into parts, I'm not going to draw the lines, but if you split it up into 5 parts, then this would be the 1/5 part, and from here to here would be your 4/5 part. Because 1 minus 1/5 is 4/5. Any questions about that? Okay. All right, so the next one is about telling you A is a midpoint. By the way, if you just look at this side, that doesn't look like enough information to solve a problem, but look over to the right. So to the right, they have the figure, and you have midpoint to start with, so you're going to set these equal. You got to remember that on midpoint, set them equal. And then from there, just solve it. So what we're going to do is, I guess let's subtract 8x because the -21 is the only number involved. 5 minus 8 is -3. So we get -3x equal -21. And then you're going to divide 2 negatives, so that gives you a +7. So make sure you know anytime it's midpoint, you're going to set them equal. Anytime it's midpoint, you set it equal. Okay, so then for XA, it says 5x, and so we're going to do 5 times 7, and we get 35. And so then at that point, it wants AY, which should be the same number. I can check. And then XY should be double. So this is what it should be. Now I'm going to check. So 8 times 7 is 56 minus 21. So 8 times 7 minus 21, that's 35. And so it worked. And then you can either add them or you can multiply by 2. Okay. Now on this one it says point E has a coordinate of 4, EG has a coordinate of 5. So the first thing you want to do is plot where 4 is, like put it in the middle. And then the way I think of this is the distance between E and G is 5. And so I'm going to go 5 to the right. So I get 9. That's one of my answers. And I'm going to go 4 minus 5 and get negative 1. So 4 to the right, 4 to the left. So my two answers are negative 1 and 9. Right 5 and left 5. Any questions? Okay. Then this one tells you AD is 11. AC is 5y minus 43. And they want you to find the value of y. So to me the best way to do this to get y is to first double this to get 22 for the whole thing. And you can write 11 for this one. Because it has 2 marks here and 2 marks here, we know they're equal. And it's 11 and 11, which makes 22. So that'd be my first step. So then these are equal. 5y minus 43 equals 22. And then you solve this equation. So plus 43 gives you 65. And then that's 13. That's 65 divided by 5. 13, yeah. Okay, so y equal 13. Now earlier I got AC as 22 and DC as 11. So even if you miss the y part, you should be able to get the AC and the DC parts, rather easily. All right, so that was number 14. Number 15, what algebraic expression represents GK? So this is one of the harder ones. Let's first think about this overlap being x and how it affects these two things. So if you have an overlap of x on this one, then you just take away an x on this. So think 4x minus x is 3x. So we've got 3x plus 3 for that part from G to H. So I just took away an x, and I get 3x plus 3. And then let's do the same thing for this one. Take away an x, and so from here to here is 4x minus 1. So that's what I would recommend doing. Is everybody okay? Okay.
Good job, Mason.
Okay, so now it's saying what algebraic expression represents GK. So for GK, we'll do 3x plus 3 plus x plus 4x minus 1. So then combine your like terms. Remember, the x terms go together. So 3x and x is 4x, plus 4 more is 8x. And then 3 minus 1 is 2. So 8x plus 2. To me, that's so much easier than a different way I worked it. The other way I did it was I just said 4x plus 3 plus 5x minus 1 and then minus x. But I don't think that's as desirable. I like this way better. But do whatever you want. Any questions on that part? Okay. So then they're telling you GK is 34, so you got to set those equal. And then subtract, you get 32, and then x is 4. So to get GH, it's going to be this 3x plus 3. That's part of the reason why I separated this out. So I'm going to do 3 times 4 plus 3. 12 and 3 is 15. This is not a midpoint question, and so you cannot assume this other one's 15, but that's what turns out. So 4 times 4 is 16, minus 1 is 15. So this is not usually the same. It just was random. Do y'all remember how these tests work? So if it's an even number like 4, they may change it to 6 or 2. And if it's an even number like 3, they may put 1 or 5. And they may change the plus to a minus. You know, they just randomize it. Okay, so in this case, it again was random, but they were identical. Okay. Okay, the next one, between 2 and 16, you want the midpoint, which is the middle. So the first thing you do is get your distance, so that's 14, and then you divide by 2 to get 7. I just did one step too fast. The 14 divided by 2 is 7 is right, but then I need to say 2 plus 7 and get 9. So this is 7 units apart, and so is this. Okay, so basically find your distance, divide by 2, and you get it. If you'd rather use the formula, you'd say 2 plus 16 divided by 2, and so that's 18 divided by 2 and gives you 9. So if you do it this way, it's probably better because this had one extra step. So just remember there's multiple ways to do things. In this case, this is probably the best approach. Add and divide by 2. Any questions or comments? Okay. Okay, so this one says you're doing the midpoint between -8 and 7. If it were -7 and +7, it'd be 0. Right? So it's just a little bit negative. It's close to 0, and it's negative. So -8 plus 7 divided by 2 is -1/2. And leave it as a fraction. Okay. Then number 18. Oh, the bell's about to ring. Let's just stop right there, and we can work on more of this tomorrow.